by now, then you should probably get familiar. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
So this is a video that I'm gonna do because I get a lot of questions about it on my Instagram, and for me to like type it and explain it, a lot of people don't understand. It's easier for me to like verbally explain why things happened. Okay, so basically in 2016, February of 2016, basically I went up for a rebound, and when I came down I tore my kneecap off of the center of my leg. So that's called a medial patellofemoral tear of that ligament, so MPFL tear, pretty much. So I went in and I did physical therapy for 2 weeks prior to reconstruction, and the reconstruction is they drilled twice, two holes into your kneecap, one into your femur, and they take a ligament and either use your hamstring to build it back up or use a cadaver ligament. I opted to use a cadaver ligament, so I had as little scarring as possible, and that's kind of funny now because I have a bunch of scarring. But so that happened on March 8th of 2016, and basically they went in and they did the surgery and it was fine. So 2 weeks later after surgery I got my stitches out and it was fine for about a week, and then actually what happened was my screws that were in the big screw that was in my femur came out and broke open through my skin and came out of my skin. So I went in, we did emergency surgery again, and I was in the hospital for just like a day or something like, yeah, maybe like a day and a half. And this was with a different surgeon because my surgeon had been on vacation somewhere, like the Virgin Islands or something like that. So I had the second surgery and then everything was fine. I got my stitches out, everything was okay, no problems. I went to physical therapy over the summer, played basketball that whole next season, which was my junior year. And everything was fine until the following August of 2017, and we noticed I started to lose a lot of range of motion in my leg, like I couldn't bend it. And then I went to a horse show, to a dressage show at Waterloo in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and my leg got all hot and swollen, and eventually I couldn't straighten it, like it was stuck, bent, because of how swollen everything was, and it was red, and we noticed that one of my incisions looked really funny, like it was going to break open. We went to the doctor and they took x-rays. It's really hard to see the screws on the x-rays, but basically what he said is that he thought that the screws had fallen out again, but stayed in my body and just kind of like floated down, causing issues because my body was rejecting them. So we went in for a third surgery the middle of August, maybe it was like the 22nd or something of 2017, and he took 2 screws out and 1 end cap, and he couldn't find the other end cap, but he said he assumed it was in my bone or it had dissolved or something. So that surgery didn't end up great. So maybe 2 weeks later, it was as soon as I got my stitches out again, my wounds broke open and were draining and like painful, obviously. So I went in for a 4th surgery because he thought I had developed a seroma, which is basically just like a pocket of fluid in there, and that was keeping it from healing. So the 4th surgery was probably late September, mid to late September, and you know, we're getting closer to basketball season, my senior year, and I was like, oh crap, I'm not going to be able to play. But so they went in and did the 4th surgery, and again with this surgery, we took my stitches out and it started draining again and it opened up. And at this point I was going to the Quarter Horse Congress in October. So I had 3 open wounds that were draining and very painful. If anybody's ever had that happen to them, it hurts. So basically for Congress, since we'd already paid and you couldn't get our money back, I just put a bunch of bandages on, I put gauze, I wrapped it so I wouldn't swell up, because it would get to the point where my ankle would swell and my whole leg would swell and I couldn't get my English boots on. Even my Western boots were tight. So basically, after October, we went back to the surgeon and he said, sorry, there's nothing I can really do for you. This is just a surgical complication. Seromas take a long time to heal. Why don't you go to the wound clinic and they'll take care of you and, hopefully get the seromas to heal. So that's what I did. I went to a wound clinic, and at this point I had gotten another MRI just to see, but the orthopedic surgeon said that it was fine, like it looked okay. We never saw it. So I went to the wound clinic, and I basically had, I would say, 7 or 8 in-office procedures, probably 7, where they would go in. This is what, every time I went to the wound clinic, this is pretty much what they did. And I would go every other week. They would go and I would get like a fluid-filled area that would come and try and break through my skin. So in order to take care of that, he would cut it open with a scalpel just in his office. He would numb it, obviously, and then we would pack it with gauze.
Is this like the favorite part?
Well, no, this hurts because it's so sore. You do it?
Mm-hmm.
Did a lot of fluid come out?
Some.
Didn't you feel it splash?
Yeah.
Interesting, huh? Thank you.
So you take like the equivalent of a Q-tip, like it's a big medical Q-tip, and shove gauze up there. Now we're into basketball season, so I'm still playing basketball. I'm just like covering it up, wrapping it, putting my brace on, and taking a bunch of ibuprofen and Tylenol to kind of like toughen it out, because it was my last season of basketball. So during the basketball season, yeah, I'd have all those in-office procedures, and we thought that it would heal, and then everything would close up, and then I'd get another like pouch of fluid, and then have to cut it back open. And so I packed those wounds for probably 10 or 11 months. And then it got to the point where when I went on spring break, it opened again right before spring break, so I couldn't swim or anything. At this time, I haven't like taken a bath or swam in almost a year, because you can't submerge open wounds in water. Actually, I used a shower boot for this entire time because you don't really want it getting wet anyways. So in April, I went to get another opinion at a general surgeon's office, and so we took MRIs. So at that point, when he got our MRIs, he went ahead and did a 5th surgery that he thought would fix the collection of fluid, or the seroma that he thought was there. So we went in and he made a really big incision. He made a couple incisions and thought that he had removed what he called an encapsulated seroma, which means it pretty much isn't going to heal unless you surgically take it out. So we did that, and then a couple weeks before my graduation, it broke open again. And this time it dehisced, so dehisced is like breaking open. This time it opened up a bunch, and it was draining a lot. Like, at the end of the day, I would go and tip my leg over, and I would basically pour out pus and nasty. I thought it was cool, but nastiness. And so at this point, we're thinking, well, I have to go to college in the fall. I don't want to go to college like this. So we tried to get back in with the orthopedic surgeon. That didn't work because he didn't think he could help us. He didn't think it was an orthopedic issue. We got another MRI, and when we went to go pick up the MRI, we saw the old MRI from October that wasn't good. I'll put it that way. So we basically sought out somebody else, but for orthopedic cases, it's really hard to find another surgeon after you've already had one, because nobody wants anybody else's problem, per se. So we did that. We found somebody that would help me. He was an orthopedic revisionist and infectious control doctor in more southern Michigan. So I went there for a consult, and he had originally told me that he thought I had osteomyelitis, which is a bone infection, and that it would never heal unless you went in and took out the infected bone. So his plan was, right after graduation, 2 days after, they would admit me to the hospital there, and I would have a 2-part surgery, which they call a staged revision. And that's basically where they go in and they take out the dead or infected bone and pretty much everything that's infected. So they thought they were going to have to take out the ligament that they had put in there to fix me in the first place. And then they would leave the wound open with a wound vac on, and I'll put a picture of that, flushing antibiotics in and out of it every hour. This was like a treatment that I think it was a new treatment that he worked on with his friends at the Mayo Clinic. And then after about a week of that in the hospital, he would go in and do another surgery and close it back up. So fast forward to that time, right after graduation, I went to the hospital and went into surgery to do the osteomyelitis procedure. And he went in, and it was a 4-hour surgery. And when we came out, he said that he had actually, it was an osteomyelitis, and he had found the missing end cap that we thought was still in my bone or had dissipated or something. So he said that around the end cap was a huge layer of biofilm layer of infection, and the infection that we found was serratia, which serratia can only be treated in wounds with IV antibiotics. So we still did the whole wound vac thing. I had antibiotics flushed in and out for every hour for a week, a little more. That ended up being like 8 or 9 days. And then we went back in and did the second part. He closed me up. He left a different wound vac on, so I had that wound vac on for a couple weeks after surgery, and a drain, which we ended up taking out because it wasn't draining. So right before I left the hospital, they put in a PICC line, which is where they put in like almost like a catheter. It's like an IV. It's just an IV, but it goes into the main blood vessel in your arm, and that goes directly into your heart. So they like feed it up, and it goes in and then into like right next to your heart. So the antibiotics go directly into your blood, and not like you don't have to take them by pill, and then you lose part of them in your intestines or whatever. So we did that, and I had a PICC line for till late July, early August. So I had a PICC line for 6 weeks, and every morning I put I would attach it to my arm, and it's like a ball, and you attach it and you unclamp it, and for 30 minutes it takes the whole ball, like deflates and lets the antibiotics in. So I did that every morning. Yeah, every morning I did that. So after that, we never had any problems. We found the solution, found the big problem, which was the screw that was missing. So now it doesn't really affect my riding very much. I don't have a lot of feeling below the knee. It's kind of hard to explain. So because of all the nerve damage, because of how many times they cut into my leg and all the scarring that you see, I can feel like my foot, and I can feel the bottom of my foot. You know, I can move my leg fine. I don't have a lot of range of motion left, so I can't like crouch, and I can't get on the horse from the correct side, and I can't get off the horse on the correct side. So yeah, I can feel my foot and I can feel my knee, but in between my foot and my knee, like that skin, and I can't like feel like anything on that. So like I could pretty much like take a needle or whatever and like touch it. Like you can touch it. I can touch it with my other leg. Obviously I feel that I'm touching it with my other leg, but I can touch it with my hand. Other people can run into it and I can't feel that. So the only way it really affects my riding is, well, I don't really know like where my lower leg sits on the horse. Like I can't tell if it's far back or forward, or how much pressure I'm putting. Like when you squeeze, it affects my English riding the most because you have to put so much balance on your leg. So that's pretty much all that it affects, is like my stability in an English saddle, which is why I don't really ride English much. It's kind of hard on my knee. So, but yeah, that's pretty much The only way it affects me, I'm not very strong. I've lost all my like quad muscle in that leg. So, but other than that, it's fine now. It's better. We are hoping to deal with the original surgeon legally, but that's something for personal lives. So, because I know people might bring that up and say like, you should sue him. Well, you know, I'd like to. So, yeah, that's pretty much
the
it.
atmosphere, architecture unfamiliar. I could get used to this.